Welcome to episode 45. Check out what we have in store for you this week. I've had too much coffee today and none of it caffeinated.
Ooh, sad.
So I did this.
Yeah, so Will got the real experience. I can't talk about portfolios, Will.
Oh no.
And not mention the king of apps, the king of tools.
All bow down. This is the High Tech Podcast with your hosts, William Millingworth and Joshua Swartz on WKX5 440. I don't know.
Wait, what? We're on a radio station now? Don't we stop being a podcast when that happens? Isn't that a radio show?
I don't know. Does that mean we got sponsored?
I don't know. I've just always understood as the difference between radio show and podcast is one is on the internet and not attached to a radio station, but Apple or Google, and the other is on a radio station.
That's a fair insight.
And they have more commercials.
Well, I guess since our opening hasn't changed, then we must still be a podcast because we want to make sure you know that we are on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Please do follow us on there, like us, tweet things to us, retweet things to us. That'd be fantastic.
Talk to us. You know what you do on social media.
We're
do that there.
All alone. There's no one here beside us.
Well, I mean, that's not true. We have some people.
You're here.
You know.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here. We have some other people, who tweet and like things.
Make
sometimes.
Sure to send us any emails, inbox ideas. We actually seriously would love to have folks who are interested in topics. If you are an app we've reviewed and you want to be on the podcast, anything like that, please do email us at inbox@hightechpod.us. We're open to it. We've had a couple of things come together because people reached out to us on Twitter or via email, and they've become a part of the podcast as a result of that. So please do reach out. And most importantly, remember, we've got a website. Every single episode has an episode page that goes along with it. So there's some resources that would help you with the app that we suggest, point you to how to get signed up. If there's ever anything special as well, we point that out in those notes. But that's the shtick at the High Tech Podcast, not radio show.
Yes, we have not changed.
So this week, Josh, we're doing pretty normal stuff, aren't we?
Yeah, this is pretty simple. It's tough because we keep recording all over the place. We made a few jokes in a couple episodes about that.
I think
at least I think we have. I don't know where we've made them at this point.
Yeah,
so if things get a little confusing at times with the High Tech Podcast, it's because we've had to record out of order because of what's coming up, exciting things. But this week, pretty simple. We've got we're just talking about a few things. The first thing is portfolios.
Should we use them?
Should we use them? And I know that a lot of you right now are like, ooh, this is the riveting conversation I've been waiting for. Like I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah. It's like today in the news, I want to know which Kardashian did what, and what do Josh and Will think about portfolios? I know that's what you were
really questioning how much you look at the news. Because that was your first go-to. I need to know in the news what's going on with the Kardashians. Because I'm a basic white chick. That's what I felt like.
I got nothing, dude.
Just got laid out there. I have no. Anyway, okay. This topic this week. Why should we use portfolios? I think let's explain ourselves of why we decided to do this. No, we are not running out of ideas. I think. No, sure. Portfolios are a big thing in education. Yeah. I feel like. I think this is a solid argument. People like to use them, especially education people tend to really like to use portfolios. But I've seen them in a lot of other places, specifically like communications majors, things like that. Like portfolios are a pretty big deal. And I think what spawned this conversation for you and I, Will, were we've seen people use portfolios in a lot of different ways. And a lot of them have not been good. Or intentional. I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where people like the idea of a portfolio,
right?
But they don't use it in an intentional way. Not always because they're just not putting in work, but because sometimes I think it's kind of confusing what we use this vehicle or activity for.
And I've even seen it used for professionals, right? So like higher education, for faculty to get promotions and things like that. On an annual basis, you have to make your portfolio, you have to submit it for tenure, that kind of stuff. I've seen this be as simple and maybe, if you will say, as bad as people like literally scanning all of their printed documents up into like a single file, zipping it, and that's their portfolio, right? And like even printing, I don't know, printing digital images and stuff and realia, and then scanning it and making pictures of stuff that they did in the physical classroom, and then putting it in a file folder and calling that a portfolio. And one of the things that I think is really challenging to me about this is that one of the backgrounds of portfolios for me is like art, right? That's a very simple area where portfolios show up. True. And I have an art college in our town, and I've seen the kids walking up and down the sidewalk with these like huge portfolios like strapped on their arm,
saw it
like
the other day.
Like walking up and down the street, like I know that they just did something, drawing, painting, whatever in class, and they have to like literally carry a portfolio. But when you think about it in an artistic sense, and the purpose of like those portfolios, they're designed. They are very well put together. They are trying, not usually even with a portfolio, it's not even just to like slap all my paintings in the same spot. It's like, this is to communicate something in this portfolio of work.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, I think the biggest challenge to a lot of the portfolio work and digital tools I've seen for portfolios. It's not about just uploading a bunch of documents to a folder and calling it a day. There's something I think to like the creativity behind the practice, organizing it effectively, but the point being designing your portfolio so that the end product is not only convenient, easy to use, but the portfolio should tell the story too. It's a part of bringing whatever you're trying to communicate across. So to me, when the faculty, for instance, when their methodology for creating a portfolio is to use a file folder with Word documents in it, it's like, it's so telling of what technology you're not aware of and what ideas and methodologies you're not using. Because I've used half a dozen or more portfolio tools, and all of them work a little bit different, but they have really good functionality.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, what it comes down to, feel free to push back on this. Not that, you need my permission. To me, I think it becomes a misconception of what portfolios are at their core for. Because I think a lot of times people come to portfolios like it's just to show the work I've done. Right. And like to a certain extent, there's a component of that. But really, at the end of the day, the best portfolios are telling a story of who I am. OK, like what I've engaged in and done. Not necessarily just like here's a files of a bunch of my work. Right. Like it's not the same thing as a resume. It's a curated piece of content that explains really who you are in a way of by looking at some of the things you've created and produced and looked at. Like there's kind of a story that you're telling in it. I think it's kind of a fair assessment. I'm not expressing it the best way.
But that's you're not wrong, Josh, on the importance of this, and even how you led off on the episode. Like I remember, I think my first portfolio I ever like was probably in the 4th grade. Like it's not something that's new. It's not just something that's higher education either. Like we're always challenged in some way to kind of, even a resume, great example, show me the best of what you're trying to say you can do to get this job or whatever it is, right? But like the portfolio's goal is always to have you demonstrate something that you've done well, and hopefully with some sort of narrative. In the context of, K-12 classes and experiences, the portfolios I did was like, keep a portfolio of your academic year. But I don't need every little piece of paper and scribble and scrap that you had.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to give me the best of the best. I want you to show me your excellent works, the things you're proud of, which I think already highlights that, like, I guess, very personal nature of a portfolio. It shouldn't just be like, slap everything together. It should be that curated, designed approach where you are presenting your best self. And to that effect, I think it is a very effective learning tool. I think it's a very effective way to have students demonstrate their competency over time and even give them the chance to reflect, as we've always emphasized, right? Reflect on the work that they're doing. But I think we're going to lean towards some of the tool sides in the latter half of the episode of like ways to do it well and tools you can use modernly. That's not a word. In the modern time. I don't know.
Today.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
I've had too much coffee today and none of it caffeinated.
Oh, sad.
But that's to me the point of this. Like, we want to advocate for the portfolio, but for a very intentional process, not just dump it, not just give me everything from week 3, or, you know, like, if you want to make a portfolio activity, give them a very intentional endpoint that should drive them to be excellent, to do their work well.
And again, I think it's like, without using all the buzzwords in the world, like, it's an intentionally curated product at the end that tells a story about who you are and the progress and learning that you've done over time. Like, I think that's how I could best define portfolios. And here's where I see, before we get too far into the tools, the weakness in higher ed of how portfolios often happen is there's no intentionality, at least in my experience, behind it happening at a programmatic level. It's usually like, this instructor for this course wanted to do a portfolio and they did it. And at a course level, it can still work, but I feel like you're losing some of the intentionality behind the portfolio if you thought about it at a bigger scale. Like, how could we help students throughout their learning career and experience build a portfolio that eventually curates some of the best about themselves and tells a story about who they are, what they've learned, and how they've grown from the beginning to the end of their learning experience, right? Like, at the end of the day, that's what I want to see out of a portfolio. So I think that's kind of my plug, to think about it at a bigger scale if you're in those circumstances that you can.
So a good example, I think, to highlight some strengths and weaknesses of how they've been delivered and can be delivered. Josh and I actually both had to do this. So in our undergrad, there was a kind of portfolio experience where you picked a theologian in one early course in your undergraduate process, and over a series of courses, you had to study that theologian, and you write papers on them, and according to different
and by the
courses.
way, Will was the only one who actually had to do this. They bailed on it after my first year.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I didn't get to do it long term.
Oh, see, I feel like you got gypped.
I did.
Wow.
Because you've always told this story, and I feel like I got kind of gypped out.
Oh, man.
I think I forget who I picked. I think it was Edwards. But
I forgot about that. I'm sorry. So I did this.
Yeah, so Will got the real experience.
Where I was challenged in my first theology class to study a theologian, and then you had to bring that theologian forwards across many different courses. Well, the I think big win there was it was very intentional. You know, you picked one person, you focused on them, and you wrote a lot of content about this person. You had to research them. You had to find books about them. You had to find books that they wrote. And you know what? That was so fun. It was so challenging. And for me, once I had completed all the courses and could like look back over this person, I almost felt like a historian. I was like, you know what? I'm a little theologian expert. This is awesome. I took it seriously. I enjoyed it. It was worth doing. But as a win, for an example, it was intentional. It was programmatic. It went well. There was different types of learning involved in it, from presentations to papers to whatever, right? And it was over time, so I could very clearly see some development points. Where it failed, though, was at the very least between some of the full-time and adjuncts I took, right? The adjuncts didn't always take it as seriously, and that just is what it is, right? But like in those courses, the quality of my work wasn't expected to be higher by some of these faculty I took. And so you can see dips in my work. Like, this is me reflecting on it, but like I could see like, in that class, I didn't really write anything more than a 1-page, prospectus on this person. Whereas in that other course, I wrote a 10-page research paper on them. So it's not like you can really qualify that as similar work, and that portfolio takes a hit for it. So that's just that one of those things. Like the programmatic level is great that it was prescribed across all the courses, but then that follow through and enforcement of keeping it up across different faculty wasn't really great. And I think that can be true even just of ourselves if we're doing one course with an entire portfolio. Like if you're doing it and you're going to hold the students to create content for that portfolio over the course of a semester in your course, it's up to you to maintain the standard that like either it progresses, from like easier, smaller assignments to a bigger culminating assignment, or that they're consistently paced and the cadence of doing like, a 3-page paper every 2 weeks or a 3-page paper every 3 weeks or something that adds to that portfolio really fulfills the goal of what they're trying to demonstrate. Now, I lean towards papers. The theologian thing was a lot of papers, but this could be presentations. Today, this can be videos that they're creating. It can be them running a Twitter account. There's a lot of ways they could be demonstrating their content for this portfolio.
Or think about it like a design, design programs or things like that. Like, what would it look like to do a portfolio activity where, like, over several courses, they're building a portfolio of accumulating activities that they've done that build towards something. So, like, maybe they have to design this certain video in the, this intro class, but then it leads to more of like a bigger production or whatever that may be, right? I'm being vague because there's a lot of different options that there could be for it. But the key is that you're then presenting it in a way that they're going to take that and curate it into this bigger picture portfolio that they can then use. And here's the other key that I think needs to be done well with portfolios. At its core of a portfolio being done well, it should be being able to be put into a product that can be taken somewhere else after they're done, right? So like you and I harp on this all the time. The amount of portfolios I've seen people do that it's like it's so locked down in the course that they did that it literally defeats the purpose of the portfolio. There's no... Like a portfolio should be something that can be shared. It could be something that the student could look back on. It should reflect on, use, utilize. And if it's locked down in the course where they can't access it after they've submitted it, or it's not transferable, it's useless in my opinion in certain ways. Like learning is, they may have learned from it, but the long-term benefits of the portfolio activity, the value is cheapened. Well, because they can't do anything with it.
And like that was one of those things where you may not always find the perfect product, but like our old LMS, it was nice in the sense that it had a portfolio tool built in and you could give a public link, right? You could use that. But after graduation, if a student gets locked out by the institution, they can never get back to that portfolio. With it. Like, so,
or edit it. Like at the end of the day, if a student wants to take, like, give them the tools that they could take that portfolio and keep using it and building on it. They can't do that if it's a specific institutional tool that they never have access to again. Right. Or they can't edit again. And I think that's the big thing. So I think, like, well, let's do it this way before we jump into some suggestions and practical stuff. Like, top 3 things that you would want to do to make a portfolio activity useful and helpful, right? So what would be those things that you're trying to do?
Yeah, I would make sure that there's a driving goal for what you want them to demonstrate about themselves. Did they improve a skill? Did they improve, their understanding of a concept? Did they do a deep dive onto something like the theologian project, right? So one driving goal, one driving deliverable across the entire thing, not just give me all your stuff. I think that there's a big pull or big push. I might put this as number 3, but it's the second thing that came to me, in priority at least. Allow it to be, or make it be multimodal in the sense of like it should be one mode or another mode, paper, presentation. Let them create a little differently. It doesn't have to be...
take some ownership of it,
Right. Give them the creativity to demonstrate themselves effectively in a tool that they're effective at communicating. This is a whole tangent, but if you've got kids out here who are using TikTok and stuff to like create viral content, let them use TikTok to communicate. I don't care. Like, I don't think it's a bad way to communicate or create content, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't have a paper, but if they could do something like create a TikTok series that explains the concept across 15 videos, with each video being, 15 to 20 seconds, I think that's pretty darn creative and effective if they can get that message across. They can still do it and do it poorly. You're allowed to grade them poorly for doing it poorly, right? Like, but yeah, I think that's an opportunity there, is to just to lean into and embrace the fact that it's a digital world. Let them create content that meets that need digitally. And I think that number 3 for me is probably going to be some element of continuity, right? So we give them that single goal to drive through, to demonstrate a skill, do something. But the continuity for me across courses was one theologian. That was that driving goal, and it worked across courses. So you have to stay consistent to that goal.
Yeah.
If it's a single course, well, don't have a portfolio that has them do something like, I want to see your video editing skills and your audio editing skills, and if you could knit. Like, what? I don't know. Like, it's just not one of these things is not like the other, And so keep that continuity of what you expect of them throughout the semester. One goal,
and that's why the goal part,
continuity.
Yeah, and that's why the goal part you're talking about is so important and a starting point. It's because it's going to help with the continuity. It's going to help with figuring out those creative ways, the multimodal ways that they get, that they bring content into this portfolio. But I like that. I think those are good kind of 3 takeaways. Now, here's where I want to. It's gonna get a little messy here because we normally do an app, and we are going to do an app. But I want to talk about other apps before we talk about the app, specifically related to portfolios. Because while the app we're going to talk about today can be used in a portfolio sense, and I'll actually explain how I think I could use this for portfolio stuff, it's not solely committed to that. This is just a fun one that we've been waiting to bring out for a while, so we felt like this was a good episode to do it. But I think number 1 I would throw out there right now that's on the top of my list is one we've already talked about, which is Wakelet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Wakelet. Like you're the one who found that on,
as
such
usual.
a surprise. So like, but it checks off a lot of boxes for me. So when I'm looking for a tool that I want to do a portfolio in, I want a tool that allows the student to curate multiple different types of mediums into one area, right? So Wakelet allows you to bring in links. It allows you to bring in videos. It allows you to bring in websites. It allows you to bring in documents and files. Like it allows you to kind of curate them, but then create them in a fun, user-friendly display.
Yeah.
Like the student can work to make it friendly so that people can look at it and they can tell their story about who they are through Wakelet. And I think that's what I really like about Wakelet.
Well, and without having to have a degree in graphics design or read and write HTML and CSS, right? Like it's a drag and drop, easy to use, customizable tool that like when I built my demo and I was playing with it, like I just put a bunch of websites and links on it, and it kind of looked clunky, just a whole bunch of listed. So I just started throwing some GIFs in the middle, and it broke it up, right? So every 3 or 4 links I had was a GIF, and it added some motion, it added some visual distinction between the stuff. I could have maybe done it a little more organized or more intentionally, but it was just that opportunity where a portfolio doesn't have to be dead. It can be lively. There can be something, engaging.
Well, you can organize it. I mean, in Wakelet, it'd be easy to organize sections depending on what you've done. I could see ways using some of Wakelet's tools to create kind of like a pseudo timeline of how things came about. Like Wakelet's a cool tool for that. So either way, I think Wakelet would be a good option. I think some other mentions in there. I don't know what your thoughts are, Will, but like I could see Adobe Spark being a tool that you could use to make portfolio content in, because again, it allows you to add multiple things. It allows the student to creatively organize them, and it's something that they can take with them outside of class and keep using long term.
Yeah, and on that effect, well, and one of the things that's starting here, like Wakelet, you could have an institutional license. Adobe Spark, you'd have an but for the most part, you might be telling people to go out and use a Gmail account or whatever to make these accounts. And so that honestly they have ownership. It's their material. It's not associated with their edu address. It's associated with their address. So they could go and do it. To that effect, I would add WordPress. Like I have a WordPress. I have a couple WordPress sites out there, portfolio sites that were built through my institution, and I'm honestly not sure that I can get back into them anymore. Right? They were associated with my @edu address, and so I don't know that I can get there. Because WordPress has a free side, you could have them set that up with a personal address, and they could make a WordPress website, which I think, at the level of like scale here, Wakelet is like plug and play. They upload stuff into Wakelet, and then they organize everything in Wakelet. Adobe Spark has some content creation tools in it, like to create videos, create images, and then you can add that into like a website experience for portfolioing. WordPress is a blank slate. Like you have to upload everything into it. You have to pick a theme. 100%. You have to you could use HTML and CSS to change the entire thing if you wanted to. So I think that it's kind of a good spectrum of like
it's a scalable, right,
from plug and play to like very custom. I think those are some great options.
And where I'm going to change those around is like if you're going to do a portfolio that lasts like an entire length of their education and it's universal, like you might want to go with a WordPress because they're going to have time to get used to it. You're going to be able to onboard them better. You're gonna be able to scaffold that over multiple courses and programs and years, and so WordPress would be great for that. A Wakelet's gonna be a lot better if this is a smaller scale,
a one-time
portfolio,
thing,
because it's a one-time thing, or it's over a couple courses, or like the theologian thing. Like it's easier to use and throw in there. One last mention I'll throw out there because I don't want to just over tool us, but it's mainly tools we've already talked about, so it's okay. I can't I can't talk about portfolios.
Oh no!
And not mention
not
mention the king of apps, the king of tools, Notion. Okay,
All
like
bow
Notion could
down.
be used for it could be used for portfolios, very much so, because Notion is similar in a WordPress sense, where like you have a lot of flexibility to create a page with other pages in it that has multiple different forms of content, from websites, images, videos, to documents, all in a curated and organized fashion. And so I think Notion is another great option in there, mainly because I'm also as everybody who knows me knows, I have an obsession with Notion that borders on a problem.
I don't know.
We don't know for sure.
I don't know which word is better, obsession or addiction. Like, I don't know which one has the sickness element.
This is an aside, folks. I converted another person. I have a coworker who just took one of my templates, and I saw him over there the other day editing it and setting up his task list and thing in Notion. I'm converting people to the Notion
side.
way of life. Notion way of life.
It's amazing.
Whatever you want to call it. So anyway, there's a lot of options out there, but you'll notice Will and I are focusing on some digital ones. And that's because I think really at the end of the day, when you're talking about portfolios, we need to get away from some of that, at least for the stuff we're talking about. If you're still doing like art classes and stuff, that's a little bit different, but I would say you could still do digital stuff. And I think there's ways to do it. So those are some of your options. That said though, I want to kind of leave a note on this topic. You know, I feel like I want to, you know, take a millisecond to
Josh,
to just drop an important note onto the topic. I feel like I just channeled you. I feel like I channeled you in the transition format today. So the app we want to talk about, it's one that's been on our list for a while. I used to use it a good bit back in the day. And I just transitioned to something different because I found Notion. That was basically the end of the story.
If not for Notion, he would still be using this
for my purposes, what I was using it for. And we have a friend, Chris, who
was on last episode.
Been on the podcast, yeah, last episode. Is I remember where we're at. Chris, who's on last episode, has also used Milanote. I know him and I have talked about it a bit. So. Milanote is an interesting tool. If I remember correctly, when I first started using them, they were really kind of doing their thing as basically trying to be a note tool for like UX and graphic designers and like the design world. And I think I gravitate towards tools sometimes in that realm because they make them look pretty. You know what I mean? Like, so there's like
because of what they're trying to use them for. They're good.
Yeah,
looking.
I love a good UX. Okay, so like. And Milanote is definitely that. I basically would define Milanote as this. It is kind of like a whiteboard note tool, okay? You basically get boards that you can create, and then within those boards can add images, files, text, headers, blocks, like organize around, draw shapes, lines, mind map in Milanote. I mean, at the end of the day, you can do a lot of different things in Milanote. It's kind of a baby version of Miro to a certain extent, with one exception. I would say with Miro, they're all about trying to be a whiteboard tool.
Right.
Okay. Milanote's not really trying to be a whiteboard. They're kind of just trying to be an open note space to a certain extent that allows creativity and allows you to kind of create a board, like almost an organized mood map to a certain extent, right? Like, so you can add tasks and stuff in there. There's a lot of things you can do. But where I want to emphasize Milanote here in this case is that it's a great creative tool if you're ever looking for your students to curate content in a creative kind of board fashion. Milanote's a great tool for that because it allows them to add images, draw things, and do it in kind of a very blocked format on a board so that they can kind of move and shape things around and organize things the way they want. And their bread and butter is that you can embed boards inside of boards. Okay, kind of like boardception.
What?
Right? So, and these boards have cool icons. I'll throw some images up on the page for this episode, so check them out. But you can create like these little icons that lead to the boards, almost like little buttons. And so it's kind of cool. So you can create like this whole board with some content, but then maybe you want to diverge into a topic that you want to create another board within that, and you can kind of create a button that leads the person there. And the reason I wanted to bring it up during portfolios is because I could see you doing a portfolio in Milanote to the point of like you can easily curate content into there, especially for our art people and our graphics people. It'd be really easy to like take images or make, maybe you designed an image in Adobe or a video and you want to curate that stuff into kind of like a board to kind of represent the elements of what you did in the project.
Yeah.
Right. Milanote could give you that ability to do that. So I could bring in maybe version 1 of the image, right? And then show very quickly with like a line and arrow, kind of the progression of how I got to the final image, and actually even upload the files from Adobe that I created into there so that people could access them and pull them out and kind of get the picture of my journey on that project. So I think like Milanote's a cool tool to use for that. So I'm doing a lot of talking because you haven't really used it.
No,
you're kind of just like learning it as I'm going.
Here's
right?
a surprise one, folks. Like this is not my app. I did not find this one. I've not used this one, but I've used things like it, and it sounds pretty cool. Do you know? Does it have any sort of like HTML embeds or linking embeds, or is it
So
text
I don't think it has
visuals?
like any HTML. It's just basically like they work off of kind of like a block format where like you have different blocks that you can use. So they have links. You can comment also. It's a collaborative tool, so you can have people comment and stuff in it.
That's cool.
Like it can be, some people use it for productivity and project management. Where I think would be really cool if I was a designer doing like graphic design or like in marketing, this would be a really cool like drafting collaborative tool, because you could like assign out things and literally have people have their own little boards within the project and click into it and see their images and comment on them. And
it sounds like a great opportunity for a gallery, virtual gallery experience too.
Yeah, or like a media gallery, things like that. Like Milanote would be perfect for that.
I actually had a lot of faculty, of course, with COVID, look into digital tools to deliver like poster sessions. You know what I mean? Where people can walk around from poster to poster. So that'd be an interesting opportunity here to see if folks couldn't create like a poster session here where each student had a different board, if you will, and you could have them kind of virtually go around from board to board and catch up with each person like a poster session. There's a couple of cool options.
Yeah, and you can share it with other people. You can't, I don't know about putting HTML in, but you can generate HTML embed code. So you can embed these in other places.
Even better.
You can export all of the stuff that you do out to a PDF, PNG, Word documents, plain text, and Markdown. So they have a lot of options for you that you're doing there and collaborating. So it's cool. Pricing, this is a freemium tool. So the free, you get basically 100 notes and images, 10 file uploads, and unlimited shared boards. Basically is how they advertise it. I will be upfront. One of the reasons I moved from Milanote is I started running out of space and I didn't want to pay for it. I'm just gonna be honest. Because the pricing does jump up. It's like $10 a month per person.
Wow.
Which is a good bit for a tool like this.
Yeah.
I was only using it at a personal level, so that's why I didn't upgrade.
Yeah.
But there are like teams and institutional level type stuff. So at the end of the day, it's a really cool tool. If this is the type of thing you're looking for, kind of this boarding, this creative note taking, this creative portfolio realm, Milanote is a cool tool. And because it's free, you can check it out. Just mess around with it. I used it for 9 months before ever moving to something else.
Wow. That's
and
a good freemium run.
I came close to paying for it because I liked it that much. And then Notion was born. So, and it created a different world for me. But I think it's a really cool tool. So go check it out. It's just at milanote.com. You can sign up for a free account. You can just create one with your email, or they support Google integration and stuff like that. So you can sign up with your Google account and just start messing around.
Sweet.
So it's a pretty cool tool.
Well, we kind of smashed a bunch of apps into this episode, but that lead app,
Yeah.
I mean, at least the whole point is that you can get these portfolios done in a digital context. I think it's such a valuable learning tool, and I know that. Okay, I finally threw them out, but like in the last couple of years, I remember finding some of those portfolios from high school and stuff. It's like, oh, that's cute to look back and see what I was learning about. All of my stuff on that theologian thing is digital. They're all Word documents, so I do have that resource still, but I would have loved to have had any of my portfolio experiences be in some sort of digital artifact that I could still access today, and share around. Yeah. So lots of cool opportunities there.
Yeah, definitely a lot of opportunities. So with that note, let's talk about next episode. So next episode is exciting. We are starting the first series of season 2. Okay.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
So we told you guys we're going to be doing some different things this year with season 2. And one of those different things is, one, Will and I realized we were creating more work for ourselves by doing separate series from our regular episodes. And so we were like, why don't we just integrate those into the seasons, right? So we'll just do series. So we have a couple different series ideas planned, but next week kicks off our newest series, which is a series about accelerated learning. And if you're not sure what that is or what we mean by that, I'm not going to answer it for you right now. There's a series literally next week.
Teaser.
Go check it out. Teaser. So super excited about that. We'll be kicking that off with a good friend of ours, Justin, or as he'll become to know in that episode, good old J Baby. So anyway, you'll find out more next episode as we kick off the accelerated series. But with that said, just a reminder, check us out online at Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Like us, subscribe, talk to us. We're here. We promise. It's,
we won't bite hard.
We're gonna keep sounding like sad people until somebody starts interacting with us. So,
that's great.
Do it. We wanna have conversations. Also email us at inbox@hightechpod.us, and you can also check out our website hightechpod.us for the resource pages for this episode. For instance, if you want to actually see what Milanote looks like,
give it a shot.
Go to that episode page. I'm going to be throwing up some stuff I've done and link it to some stuff there. So check it out. But with that said, thank you again, folks, for another week of the High Tech Podcast, where we're just trying to figure out how to harness that technology. That tricky tech.
Lasso
tricky tech. We're just trying to lasso it so we can harness it in our classrooms, whether online or in the physical space. So we appreciate you journeying with us at the High Tech Podcast. See ya.
See ya.